Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game So today we're going to be doing a series on the best Teknoparrot games you can play today, and we're on to part 2 of the best arcade Lightgun games. I'm starting it off with one of my particular favorites. I've loved the entire franchise. This is Lethal Enforcers 3, which is a little bit of a misnomer because they can call it Lethal Enforcers 3 all day long. It really is Police 911 3. Because Konami had a bunch of different arcade Lightgun games back in the day. You had Police 911 and 911 2, as well as Lethal Enforcers 1 and 2. And if you've ever watched either of my videos on those franchises, you're going to know that they can call this Lethal Enforcers 3, but it genuinely is the gameplay of Police 911. Which is not a bad thing whatsoever. It's a super hyper-realistic police gangster shootout game taking place in the streets of Tokyo. It's fun, it's wild, it has a very Japanese flair to it, and it has that classic Konami jank that we all know, love, and crave. And that's all we ever ask for of a good arcade Lightgun game. But before we get too much further involved, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. And additionally, Lethal Enforcers 3 is another arcade game that my Discord and I were able to release for everyone as far as the dumps were concerned, because it wasn't available until that happened, and that is absolutely awesome, because in North America, I've never seen an arcade cabinet for Lethal Enforcers 3. If you know where there is one, leave me a comment down below. I know they are in Japan, but it's one of those titles always did better over in the East than it did in the West. At least Police 911 did come to PlayStation 2 in Europe as well as Japan with a webcam that would allow you to move your body around and control the motion on screen. But here in Lethal Enforcers 3, it just is one of those games. I absolutely love the overall theming of it. Playing as a Tokyo Police Department cop, just shooting your way through all these different battles. There's so many different levels, and the end of the game takes place basically when you're storming the Japanese Diet, which would be their version of the Senate. You definitely get downgraded if you hit an innocent civilian, and you even get those fun newspaper articles coming up telling you exactly who you accidentally shot, and there's definitely some big names in this game as well. It is just fun. It might not be the prettiest game in the world, but it's an absolute hidden gem classic, and one that you can play in Teknoparrot today. I play it with my gun for IR, but it'll work with Sinden, it'll work with Retro Shooter, it'll work with a mouse. Really whatever you want to use will be totally fine. You'll see there I did take a death, but unfortunately in this next scene I am going to basically shoot one of the highest members of the defense team, the Secretary of Defense. Now moving on to a game with a completely different theme. This is Luigi's Mansion. We're not going to be fighting through the Japanese Senate. We're going to be fighting through some mansions, trying to suck up ghosts into the poltergeist that Dr. ECAD gave to us. This is actually made by Capcom, weirdly enough, and it's published on Sega Arcade hardware. So it's a Nintendo game developed by Capcom, released on Sega Arcade boards, and that definitely isn't something you would expect every day. And for everything that a Lightgun game is, Luigi's Mansion is the complete opposite, but still uses the same overall gaming conventions. It's colorful, it's cheery, it's totally a game that you can put on for your kids, or you can play it yourself and it's still going to hit, because I absolutely love Luigi's Mansion as far as the 3 console games are concerned, and this is a really great pivot to that first-person on-rail style shooter that you get in the Lightgun genre, except you're not really shooting anything. You're using the flash to stun the ghosts, and then you're using the poltergeist and the aiming reticle on the screen to be able to actually take them into that vacuum cleaner. And you'll see, depending on what direction you pull, left or right, you'll either get a stronger or a weaker suction, which is going to make the boss battles easier or harder. And it really does work well with something like Gun for IR, because you can basically just whip the gun back and forth like you're pistol whipping somebody, and you're going to get a better or worse performance based upon how you move it. It kind of feels like using something like a Wiimote in the game, which you totally can do as well, and it's just another classic arcade game that never got a home port. And I'm really surprised on Nintendo Switch, because the fact that the Joy-Cons do have motion controls in them, this was never actually brought home for a Nintendo console, because it is their property, and generally they don't release a lot of arcade games if they don't get home ports at some point in time. But this game's old enough now where I really don't ever expect to see it at home, but you can pop it into Teknoparrot and play today. But leave me a comment down below and you tell me, have you ever played Luigi's Mansion Arcade before, and did you know it exists? Because I feel like this one's a little bit of a deep cut. Last time I talked about it, people said they didn't even know there was a game in the franchise. But it's got a great soundtrack as well, so listen for 45 seconds and I'll be right back with more. Just a fun game all around. Now moving over to something that is somewhere between Lethal Enforcers 3 and Luigi's Mansion Arcade. This is Haunted Museum, also known as Panic Museum. It's developed by GameWax and released by Taito, and it basically is their own version of something like the House of the Dead. It takes place in a museum, not a haunted mansion like Luigi's Mansion does, but it still has a lot of those same comedy vibes. This is definitely horror light. Sure, there's going to be a couple of mummy zombies, but otherwise it's going to be a pretty tame game. So it is one of those ones, if you want to put it on for your kids, they are going to have a lot of fun, and it definitely has a lot of jank to it in the best ways possible, just because the game is basically trying to be everything all at once. You're going to have the haunted Egyptian display, you're going to then go into a train ride and have to battle the Sphinx, which is going to be the boss here. Other levels are going to have you going through different military installations, or you're even going to go through basically Alice in Wonderland with some of the card knights here, and you're also going to get a Frankenstein battle in there, because why would you not? This game is just weird in all the best ways possible. It's never quite sure what it wants to be, but it always wants to be fun, and it always accomplishes that goal of being fun. And that's why I always love Lightgun games. They are so janky in their storytelling and a lot of their voiceover and dialogue, but that's what the genre's always been. And again, this is another rare cabinet you're rarely if ever going to see in North America at this point in time, but it's 100% a game that is worth playing because it has so much charm and unique flair to it. I really honestly can't get enough of it. Like a giant bee battle, who doesn't want to participate in that? And that really is the good thing about Haunted Museum. It's constantly changing itself up, because as much as I love arcade Lightgun games, I will admit that at the 35th or 40th minute of the exact same theming, maybe you feel like the game has gone on just long enough and you're looking to get out and go on with your day. But something like Haunted Museum, just basically every 5 minutes is completely going to change the theme up. Sometimes you're fighting through Egypt, sometimes you're fighting a giant bee, sometimes you're fighting a helicopter in another helicopter a la Silent Scope. It is just a ton of fun. It basically feels like 6 games shoehorned together into one in all of the best ways possible, and GameWax always made great games in my opinion, which means we're moving on to another GameWax game, and this one is just batshit crazy. This is Gaia Attack 4, and if you're wondering, there is not a Gaia Attack 1 through 3, that is just what they called the game, and it takes place basically in really bad full motion video. They shot a bunch of camera shots out in the world and then just basically put an entire Lightgun game over top of it, but it 100% works. It's absolutely insane and hilarious, and in some of the scenes you're even going to see some of the crew moving things around with their hands when they weren't supposed to get caught. This game is definitely weird, but it is intentionally so. It is definitely janky, but that's the entire design aspect, just be a little bit janky. Like the first level here, you're just outdoors at a patio and these giant sentient mushrooms are just going to start attacking you out of nowhere. Why is it happening? Well, the story is in the game. I'll let you discover that on your own, but this one is just straight up hilarious, and the best part is it is a 4-player Lightgun game, which is going to take some setting up for sure on your Teknoparrot installation, depending on what guns you're using or controllers, but it is one of the few games in this franchise and series that you're going to be able to actually play as a 4-player game, and you can see the employees shaking those legs of the chairs underneath the table if you look closely, which is absolutely amazing, and just goes to drive forward just how weird Gaia Attack 4 truly is. This is basically just a knockoff Ghostbusters level right here, and I love that those ghosts are actually pushing that cart, which is being pulled by a string in the scene. This overall overlay where you can actually see the ghosts only when you're looking through the scope just works, and again, I absolutely love Gaia Attack 4. It is just absurd in all the best ways possible. I'm assuming it's a game you've probably never heard of, so leave me a comment down below. Plus the soundtrack and the overall music is just absolutely a 10 out of 10 listen, and I'll be right back with more games.
Emergency call for the GA4. Please respond. Reports of illegal sales of smuggled space goods in a shop in Sector K6. GA4, you are to make your way immediately and destroy all offending items.
Wow! There are so many! Take it all down!
I mean, you seriously cannot go wrong with that. And then this next level is absolutely my favorite in the game. You can just tell the developers went out to the parking lot wherever they were making this title, probably some office park somewhere, and just started moving their camera left and right, and then went back into the actual game engine and started putting in aliens trying to kidnap cats in the scene. The cats are some of the ugliest cats I've ever seen put to video gaming in the modern era, and it is just absolutely hilarious. Definitely some big Alf vibes here, because if you don't remember Alf, his entire goal was to eat a cat in the show, and he never actually got a chance to do it. This is basically Al's buddies getting revenge because they're carrying cats off into the distance to try to actually eat them, and it all takes place in just some random car park somewhere. Gaia Attack 4, straight up 10 out of 10. Now moving over to another Lightgun game that my Discord and I were able to release for free for everyone and preserve it for the future. This is Castlevania the Arcade. It does have some Lightgun functions in it. You do have bullets that you can shoot into the screen, but then you swing your Lightgun back and forth like you're whipping, and that is basically how you play the Castlevania portion of the game. I use this on Gun for IR, and again just basically pistol whip back and forth, and the mouse tracking acts as that whip, and you can basically just beat the ever-loving hell out of your enemies like they owe you money. And this is definitely a deep cut. The cabinets didn't really get much distribution. A lot of them break very easily because basically people are just swinging the controls around in air, and trust me, your average arcade user does not treat an arcade cabinet very well whatsoever. And that's why you see a lot of Lightgun cabinets with out of order signs out into the world, because the guns just absolutely get banged up, and in the instance of Castlevania the Arcade, the whip Lightgun basically just gets absolutely trashed. This is something that people can play until the end of time, and it is available in Teknoparrot. Now there's also an additional loader outside of Teknoparrot if you want to do that. My Discord kind of buttoned up to get the game running with controls, but honestly in the Teknoparrot UI it explains a little bit more how you actually want to get something set up. But honestly, the only wrong way to play Castlevania the Arcade is to not play it whatsoever. This is just a straight up hidden gem. I love the horror elements of it. I love the fact that it's actually not the most fast-paced game around. Kind of feels like the counterpoint to Silent Hill the Arcade, which I talked about in the previous video. Konami like to make some slower arcade games, and this has some of the best remade music in any Castlevania from some classic tracks that's ever been introduced to the public. So go ahead and listen to this track for like 35 seconds. It is one of my favorite Castlevania music of all time, and I still have a couple games to show. I mean, every Castlevania game has good music, but for my money, Castlevania the Arcade is one of the best. Now moving over to Point Blank X, if you've ever played a Point Blank game before, you'll 100% understand what's being expected of you here, but interestingly, this was a ticket redemption machine in arcades. You would play Point Blank X, and depending on how well you did, tickets would spit out of the machine to redeem for prizes later. Now you're definitely going to lose that functionality because we don't have anything on our PCs that are going to spit tickets out, although I'd be hilariously amused if I could actually see somebody mod that in. But you're going to be able to play this game, and you absolutely should, because Point Blank X is just one of the best collections of Lightgun mini games out there, and it's another game that my Discord and I were able to get out into the world. If you can't tell already, there's a trend in today's video. A decent amount of these titles have been found and released by myself and my Discord members and administrators, because we just really love keeping the arcade dream alive. Because if you know me in the channel, arcade games are where my heart lies. I have tons of consoles, I have tons of handhelds, all sorts of FPGA devices, but my arcade collection really is my favorite thing about collecting games. I just love the hardware, and Point Blank 1, 2, and 3 on PlayStation 1 or the equivalent arcade boards are some of the best games you can ever play, and giving Dr. Don here a haircut, getting rid of his afro by shooting at him, 100% just the type of thing that I want to see and I want to play. And that is the great thing about Point Blank X. It's everything that you've seen before from the series, remade in HD with all of the same challenge, and on something like Gun for IR with this incredible accuracy. Even those levels where you have one bullet to hit one small target, if you hit it or if you miss it, it's down to your own aim and talent and not fighting with the controls whatsoever. So this is one where I would definitely bring something like Gun for IR into the mix. You can play it with pretty much any other light gun out there, but for my accuracy, I need that Gun for IR. Now moving over to Time Crisis 5, the only Time Crisis that's never seen a home release. Thankfully it is playable in Teknoparrot, so you can play every single Time Crisis game that ever hit arcades from start to finish, because this is the one game, and I do not understand why it just never made it to a home console. And I played this in the arcades, I played it at home, I did a Time Crisis retrospective. Time Crisis 5 is big, gigantic, over-the-top light gun action in the best ways possible. And of course, you're going to get Wild Dog and his friends in the game, because it would be a sin if Wild Dog wasn't included. Time Crisis 5 just plays so incredibly well, and you have the dual foot pedal here. You can move left and right, and I actually do have USB foot pedals when I play this game. If I remember, I'll leave a link below to the ones that I use. But one more soundtrack sample, because Time Crisis 5 has some legit music as well, but don't go anywhere because I still have one more game to show you, and a very weird one at that. I mean, playing Time Crisis 5 feels like a Michael Bay movie come to life in all the best ways possible. There's so many weird characters, there's so many amazing action set pieces, there's so much good light gun shooting. It really just delivers on every single front. And I know some people didn't love it because it was way over the top, even compared to Time Crisis 4 that came before it. But for me, that is kind of what the light gun genre is. You can do whatever you want, and so long as it's fun, you can totally get away with it. Which is moving into the last game in this video, Wartran Troopers from Konami. Now this is a sequel to War Z on the Konami Viper board, where you would basically fight skeleton soldiers on the battlefields of Normandy and other places through World War II Europe. It was strange, it makes no sense, and Konami decided, hey, you know what, we're going to make another game in that franchise, and we're going to go ultra wide screen with it, because the arcade cabinet had two screens side by side, giving you this ultra wide aspect ratio. The game is absolutely hilariously fun, the levels are strange and unique, and all of the voice acting and the theme song for Wartran Troopers is some of the weirdest stuff I have ever seen put in any arcade game. And don't worry, in about a minute I'm going to let you listen to some of the theme song, because you're not going to understand what in the hell Konami was on that day when they decided to make it, but you're going to absolutely love it. This game basically feels like a mix between War Z and something like Time Crisis, as well as something like Silent Scope. There's going to be areas in which you do get a scope on screen, and you're going to have to find your opponent either in the dark or further off into the distance. I'm not trying to say that this is one of the best hidden gems of all time. It is definitely B tier jank, but it's the best flavor of that jank. It's weird, it's strange, it makes you wonder what's going on, and the best part is, just like Guy Attack 4, it is a 4-player experience. If you got 4 light guns hanging around, you can hook up to your PC, you and 3 of your best friends can have some of the strangest times you're ever going to have playing an arcade light gun game, because I can't stress enough, this is just a weird title. It definitely is intentionally so, but it's one of those things when you're playing it, you're going to wonder to yourself, why were they doing this? Why did they think it was going to work? And how does it somehow work even though it is strange? And here comes that Wartran Troopers theme song. It is 10 out of 10 weird.
Welcome to Outran, the training camp from hell and pride of our National Defense Force. Prepare for the harshest training of your lives! Sir! Yes, sir! We are the troops of Outran, rise and hide. Through silence, through silence, voice and cry. Ultimate training, soldiers first class, will graduate and show our eyes. Salutes to instructors, here's to sirs.
I mean, if you saw that in the arcade, I'm not sure if that would compel you to want to play the game or not want to play the game, but I'd at least throw a credit in to find out what in the hell was going on, and that is effective. But if I had to pick one game out of this entire Best Light Gun Games video, and this is part 2, it would have to be Lethal Enforcers 3. It just does everything right in my opinion. I love the realistic setting through Japan, and it is just a franchise that I've always loved, but remember, I don't care how much Konami wants to call it Lethal Enforcers 3. This is Police 9113 all day long, but leave me a comment down below, tell me your favorite game from the video if you want to see more videos like this. But we're done, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.